Okay, hello everyone. There have been a lot of questions on the mailing list about how to use the CellList, and so I decided to do a quick demo with a very small app to showcase the usage of CellList. The app is going to have two screens, one with a list where you can select an item and go to a detail screen. It's not going to be a real app, it's just going to be a showcase. So let's get started. We're going to do this from scratch. So I'm going to use, whoops, this should not have been the case. I'm going to use the Maven archetype to generate me a project. Here it is. Nice copy and paste. So I'm just going to name that something like Google code.mgwt.demo. I don't know, CellList or something. CellList here as well. Version, I don't care. Notice that the package name has to be the same as the group ID for the archetype to work. Oh, I forgot to set, I've got an empty work. I started with an empty directory with my workspace. Now I've got a project, the CellList. I'm going to go into the project, generate the Eclipse files with mvn eclipse. This is going to take a while. So, and I'm going to explode the WAR file. So, let's run real quick. Okay. Great, and we're done. So now I'm going to import the project. You can see the CellList. There's the project with all the stuff. Recognized by Eclipse. Great, let's tell the Google plugin that this is actually a GWT project. Got a war directory. For this we take source main web app. Very important here, deselect launch and deploy from this directory. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual project. Here in source main Java, we can see it generated a lot of stuff. We don't need the tablet stuff. It just said we're just going to do a phone application. Let me quickly delete that. So we don't need the CSS for the tablet. Let me delete that as well. So now we're getting some compile errors in the entry point. It's not that bad because we're not going to need the tablet part here. We're just going to build a phone display. So, and we don't need that create tablet display routine. So I'm just going to delete it. Okay. Okay, we don't need the import for the app binder. Organize some imports. This is actually not my normal workspace, so it's not configured properly, but it behaves a little bit different than I'd expect. So let's see, we got basically an empty client factory just with the event bus, place controller, simple implementation for them. Then we've got an almost empty place history mapper just with the home place, which is in here, which basically was nothing. And we've got the entry point. Just going to set up mgwt. We're just going to build the client factory and set up normal gwt. Just going to set up the main gwt MVP framework. So great. Let me quickly set up auto format in this Eclipse because I haven't turned it off yet. Let's save actions. I'm going to have to do something to the formatter as well. Okay, this one here. So now we should be good to go. Let's give it a try. Formatted, great, format's great. So sorry for that. So let's see. Okay, we're good to go. We basically got an empty app which does nothing so far. So I'm going to start off by adding 2 activities with 2 displays and connecting them. So let's start off with our home activity. For that I'm going to create the first thing, a home activity. So we also need a display. So I'm going to say we got a home view here. And if we got the interface for the view, we also need the implementation for the view. So it's going to be home view mgwt implementation. Okay, great. So let's set up some interfaces here. So our view needs to extend this widget to be a proper view. So let's say let's set it's going to be a list with a few things mentioned inside the list. And so we need a basic interface, we need to be able to render something, and we need to be able to get the selected element of the list. One more quick thing we need to do, I just prepared that for the demo. We need to have a model subpackage with some utilities inside there. I'm not going to go into them, I'm just going to create a model subpackage, create a person class. This is going to be the kind of model we're going to render inside the list. The code for the person, I'm just going to paste it in. It's basically just a person with a first and a last name and a job. Something like a simple Java code like this. And we're going to need some people inside a list. So I'm just going to go here and build a class called person utility. And all that does is put up some people inside a list and a map so we can access them. Normally we load such a data from a server somewhere. So this is just something very small. We just got fix some imports here. Okay, this is just a basic list of some people. Okay, so back to our view. So I just said we need to be able to render some people, to show some people in the list. Normally I call that method render, and it's going to take the list of people it has to show. Let's call that people. Fix the imports. Okay, great. And if someone gets selected from the list, we also have to know which cell got selected. This is why CellList implements a simple interface. It's called has cell selected handler. I'm just going to call it getList here. So this is the interface our view has to conform to. Remember, we're doing MVP, so this means we have to have a dumb view. So let's implement that view. So I'm just going to say it. Sorry, not extends, implements home view. So those are the routines we need to implement. So what do we need to do? Basically, every time you're going to build a view that's going to be inside an animation, some kind of top-level view, it's going to have a layout panel. It's root. So normally I tend to call it main, something like new layout panel. And be alarmed here, you don't import the Google layout panel, you import the Google Code layout panel. So I'm going to create that field. I'm going to save it into a field because in as widget I need to return exactly that field. Everything we do is contained in that layout panel. So we want to have a nice header, so I'm going to say new header panel. Also the Google Code one from mgwt. This is going to be the header panel. I'm just going to say This needs some text. I'm going to use the quick one, set sender, the text. This is my debug. Okay, so and add this to the main panel. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to need is the list. A CellList always, I'm going to type here, CellList always, CellList, the Google Code one, it always needs to know the type of model it's going to display. In our case, it's going to be the person we just talked about, and it also needs to have the cell. The cell is responsible for getting the model and returning the HTML that is going to be inside that little li element. So right now we don't have a cell, so let's create one. So I'm going to create a new class. Let's call that, I don't know, a person cell. It's going to be the cell that is able to render a person into HTML. And we're going to say it implements cell. Again, the Google Code one. And here we need to tell it a cell of person. So, okay, so we need to implement those two methods. Can it be selected? And we can decide on the model, but in our case, all people can always be selected and show their details, so it's always true. Okay, here we get the model for that cell. You have to think about, if you have 5 items in the list, this routine gets called over and over with the different models for each row. So we're going to get the HTML builder and the model. So normally what you do in GWT, you define some kind of markup for a cell. You could do this in code right now, but it's much easier to let the compiler take a part of it and just fill in some values into the HTML markup. And this is exactly what we're going to do here as well. So I'm going to paste in some code and explain something about it. Here, this is a simple template from GWT. You can see the only thing you need to do, you need to have an interface that extends save HTML template. And you can annotate your HTML and some values where you can fit something in. And then you have a routine where you can call content, pass in the value, which gets put in right in here, and you get back the save HTML string, which you can append to your builder. And this is almost the simplest cell I can think of, just a plain div. We can do a span, we can do nested values, we can do classes, everything you can do with HTML here, and pass in our model values. So if you want to have an instance of that template, you can do this statically because we just need one. You can just pass it to GWT create, and it's going to create all the routines you're going to need for making this work. So what we're going to do here is just use the template. So I'm going to say template content. And in my case, I want to display the first name, and after that the second name, the last name of the person. So I'm just going to say model.get first name plus empty space plus model.name. So now you can see I got save HTML content, and I just can say save HTML builder append that string. That's not a string, but basically it is a string. So if you want to do some complicated markup with your list, here's the place, and you can do, if you have like, I'm just going to show it real quick, if you have another value like here, which you want to pass into another place, you can do it simply like this. So if you want to do complicated markup here, that's fine. But in our case, I'm just going to go with a very, very basic markup. So this is all we needed to do to control our markup. If you have questions about how the markup of a complete CellList would look like, you can easily just take a look at the Java doc for CellList. This is properly explained here. You can see it just creates an unordered list with the things you do. Those are provided by CellList, the UL element and the LI element, while this here, your markup, this is what you do inside your cell. This can be anything you like it to be. Okay, back to the implementation. So right now we do have a CellList, person type. We do have a cell, a person cell. so. Let's put our list into a variable, and we're good to go. And just append that list to the main layout panel. Main CellList. Okay. So if we ask to render something, we're just going to call the CellList and tell it to render the list of people. And if someone wants to register a site-selected listener or handler, I'm just going to return in the CellList. Note that I'm not returning the CellList as an instance of CellList, I'm returning it as has cell-selected handler. So I can implement an easy mockup for testing here, which doesn't have anything to do with real markup. So basically this is all we need to know. I do like the round CellList, so I'm going to say this one should also be a round one. So this looks very good for our view. It conforms greatly to our interface. So next thing we need to do is implement our activity. I'm going to go here and extend mgwt abstract activity. Ooh, sorry. Okay, let's build that activity. Okay, this. For showcase purposes, I'm going to inject the, not really inject, but inject to my constructor the client factory, which is going to give me access to the instance of my view. So we're going to need to build this. So it's not going to exist yet, so I'm going to say here home view, my view. Here's something client factory, get home view. It's going to give me a compile warning here. I'm going to say, okay, create me that method. I'm going to implement that later, just do this one first here. So the last thing I need to do is set panel, set that view. So in between we're going to fill in our data. So we do have that utility I just talked about, so I'm going to say person utility, give me the model, this is get sorted list. I'm going to call that model and save that as an instance field. Because we're going to need later if something gets selected. So we're going to need to render those things. So we're just going to say view render the people. And the next thing we're going to need to register a handler. I'm always using @handler registration because it gets cleared once the activity is done. So this is just a convenience method. You can do it as you like, but this is how I like to do it. But list @cell selected handler, new cell selected handler. Okay. And here we're going to get the index of the selected cell. I'm just going to alert it real quick to show you. And then we're going to set wire everything up and start up the app. And getting this. Okay. Fix the import. Normally I don't use window.alert, but for a quick showcase that should be okay. Okay, we still need to implement the method in client factory. So I'm going to instantiate the GWT implementation here, of course, and return it, create it. So let's see quickly. We are in place tokenizer, that's okay. So we're still going to need to be in the activity mapper. So I'm just going to always return the home activity here at first. And let's take a look at our animation mapper. Okay, this is just slide, but that's okay as well. So let's start up the app and take a look. We need to select the war directory. So I'm just going to start it up now. Okay, so this is, now we've got the URL. So let's see, this is starting up. While this is starting up, I can still check Twitter. Okay, let's see. Oh, this really takes an awful lot of time. Ah, it all loaded. Okay, so fine. Here's our screen. We can see the layout panel taking up all place. We can see if I resize, looks great. Then we can see the edit panel with people in it, and we can see the list with the rendered people in it. Actually, I forgot to put in a scroll panel, so if I go too small, we cannot scroll, but for a demo, this is perfectly okay. You can see in the showcase how to apply a scroll panel for yourself. So if I select a cell, okay, that's my alert. Great. Okay. So let's try to find out what we need to do to show some details to that. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is, I think that actually this is a good place to split up the video, and I'm going to pause here at first, and I'm going to show you the second part.